the radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday night. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. All right, today we're going to talk about fear. Fear on Yaron Rules number 4. Sponsored today by one of our supporters here, and it's by an anonymous supporter from Canada who's going to be sponsoring the next 10 Yaron Rules for Life shows. So we have guaranteed sponsorship for the next 10 Yaron Rules. I thought Yaron Rules would be like 2 or 3 shows, but because of popular demand, we will... We will be running Yaron Rules for forever. We'll have to keep coming up with new stuff. All right. Let's see. Everybody's here. Thanks for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. A few changes you might have noticed. So, one, lighting's changed. And because lighting changed, I turned off the spots in the ceiling, so the background now is very different. So let me know what you think. I like this look. I like the dark background, the kind of gray, dark gray background. But let me know what you think, how I look, how the background looks. Ultimately, the background will be a bookcases. The flowers that used to be there were never alive anyways. They couldn't have died, Hank. I don't know, with this lighting, they didn't look that great. So we took them down. If you like this look, let me know. Again, with the bookcases in the back, it'll look different. But lighting is new. I bought them today. I really like these lights. They're really cool. And they're on Wi-Fi, and I can control them from my computer. So I can change the contrast. I can change how soft it is, how yellow it is, how cool it is. All of that can be changed significantly. So I can create more color if we want, but I think this actually looks good. And then on top of that, I figured if I'm gonna wait for an audio engineer to come and figure all this audio stuff out, it'll never happen. So I got the manuals out, I got the books out, and I try to figure it out myself. So I reset all the settings on the audio for the show. So there should be no clipping. So if you hear clipping, let me know. Put out a big flash sign, like do a super chat. That way I'll definitely know, so that I can tell. But check out the sound as well. Let me know how it sounds. It should be warmer. It should be just generally better sounding, and there should be no clipping at the top. So better picture, better audio, I think. You'll have to tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's better audio. So let me know if you're hearing right. Let me know if there are any distortions. Let me know if there's clipping, if the volume's too soft, the volume's too high, they're too harsh, whatever. This is good, because if this is the setting, I'm going to freeze it and keep this setting for our shows. So no disco ball. Sorry, Hank. No, this is a serious show with a serious background. All right. Grainy 4-bit audio. What do we got? Grainy 4-bit audio? I don't think there's a slight echo. Oh my God. Now we're getting all these audio critics. Fix the codec selection. What the hell is the codec? You guys are way beyond me. What are you talking about? It looks 3D like it. I don't know. Some people fix your codec selection on the computer. To what? And how do I get to the codec selection on my computer? Codec selection. There's such a thing as a codec selection. Everybody else says it sounds fine. I don't know how you change your codec selection. Anyway, if somebody has a advice on how to fix this and how to change your codecs selection in your audio, let me know, because I have no idea. Jonathan writes, Yaron, you're a huge inspiration to me and so many others. I'm living a happier life. Thank you for all that you do. Keep it up. How come altruism didn't play? Oh, this is Michael. We will get to that. Get to that question. Audio. I don't see any codexes here. All right, somebody's going to have to figure this out and let me know what the hell they mean by codex. And where I change it. All right. I'm not using an audio program. I use OBS to do both audio and video. I have a soundboard and an audio preamp. So I had a preamp compressor and a soundboard, a Soundcraft soundboard, and a preamp and compressor, and those two are hooked to a really nice mic, and they are hooked to the computer through UBS. That is the setup. So if you guys have a way to improve the setup, let me know. I don't use any audio software. All right, let's get down to it. Yaron's Rules for Life, Part 4. We start today. Part 4, today we're going to dedicate to the question of fear and risk. I've talked about this before, but I want to spend a little bit more time today just focused on these issues. And again, it is an issue. Wanda Freeman is distracting me because he keeps saying I've got a problem with the audio after the compressor. I've got a tube preamp. I've got a compressor going into a soundboard going to the computer. So you guys will have to figure out what's wrong. I can give you the exact models. The soundboard is a Soundcraft Notepad 8FX, and the YouTube is a Tube MP/C project series made by Art, A-R-T. All right. That's all we're going to do to talk about it today. All right, so rules for life. Remember, rules for life are always, always, always focused on what? What is the fundamental issue with rules to life that we talked about in episode 1, and then when I reminded you in episode 2, and I have to remind you again in episode 4. Rules for life, the focus is on your life. It's on being selfish. It's on recognizing that your life is it. There is nothing beyond it. That you must value your life, and you must value the things that make your life possible, that make your life successful. So take your life seriously is Yaron's rule for living number 1. And everything is in the context of this, right? Everything is in the context of this. So the question now is why, what you didn't do your homework. You got to do your homework, guys. You got to do your homework. You got to integrate these ideas. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So everything we talk about in rules of life is oriented around the issue of taking your life seriously, taking every moment of your life seriously, living your life to the fullest, living your life to the fullest potential, embracing it, and striving to achieve happiness, pursuing happiness as your ultimate moral purpose. echo in your audio, but there was an echo in the past in the audio. This is a new echo that you guys have not heard in the past. It's a Notepad 8FX. Notepad 8FX. So I'm curious if the echo that you're hearing, I mean, the room is not acoustic, right? So I need bookcases, and then we might put some acoustic panels maybe on the ceilings. So I'm not surprised that there's an echoey sound to it. The real question is there an echo that wasn't here last show I did? Is there a decrease in the quality of the sound from the last show I did? Because that was, because I've changed the settings since then. Right. All right. So your life, your values, that's the orientation. Now, one of the things I've observed is probably the emotion that most inhibits people from actually pursuing their life, from actually pursuing their happiness, from taking the steps necessary to achieve, to succeed in life, at living, at making the most of their life, is fear. So I want to talk today about fear, about overcoming fear, about courage. So, I mean, what is fear? And fear is an emotion. It's an emotion that creates anxiety, creates, you sense it as fear. Something is wrong. I should stop. I should run. I should crawl up as a ball and pretend I'm not alive. Right? Fear is this powerful emotional response to things. It's very primal. It's very it's one of those most fundamental of all emotions, and it's a response to danger. And from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense that danger, threats in the world out there are something we need to respond to, something we need special focus to address. We need something to alert us. Fear is that emotion that alerts us to danger, alerts us to threats to our existence, threats to our survival, threats to our values. And in that sense, it is an incredibly healthy and important emotion. Because what are emotions? Emotions are instantaneous integrations, super fast integrations of the facts in front of you based on conclusions you have already come to, based on conclusions you've had in the past. Right? So, to the extent that your conclusions are healthy, and to the extent that the facts that you're very, very quickly integrating subconsciously are accurate to reality, fear is an alarm bell that goes off to warn you, again, of threats, dangers to you, to your life, to progress, to values. And then the question is, what does one do? The question is, what one does do. One feels fear, again, immensely powerful, immensely often experienced as debilitating, because everything about you says, I should go in a different direction. I should stop what I'm doing and I should run, or I should hide, or I should do something that is a matter of change. I should not continue pursuing this course. So it is one that is It's an emotion that suggests dramatic change in whatever course you're on. An avoidance of the course, the values that you might be pursuing. So what does one do when one feels fear? Well, I mean, assuming the threat or the danger is not imminent and real, right? If the threat is imminent and real, one has to act quickly and decisively to eliminate the threat or to put yourself out of the context of the threat. Somebody's running down the street with a machine gun, you run. Or if you have a gun yourself, you shoot him. But, you feel fear and you act quickly to address the issue. Most of the times, we're not facing emergencies. Right? So in a non-emergency situation, what does one do when one feels fear? What one does whenever one's faced with a challenge, what one does is stop and think. Think. So my emotions are suggesting that there is danger, that there is a threat. Is there? What are the facts that I can observe? What are the facts that I know around me? Remember, emotions are not tools of cognition. They're just telling you that they're quick integration of what's going on right now in your life. There's danger. There's a threat. Might be right, might be wrong. It's just telling you what your subconscious is feeding you. Now you have to stop. What is going on in my life right now? Why? What are the facts that suggest I'm afraid? That suggest I should be afraid? Or that suggest, more importantly, that there is danger, that there is a threat? Think about moments where you've been afraid. Afraid of asking a girl out for a date. Afraid of asking your boss for a raise. Afraid of starting a company. Afraid of quitting your job and looking for a new one. Afraid of telling your wife you didn't love her anymore and wanted a divorce. It's rare in the world in which we live that fear is existential in a sense. There's a lion charging at me. Best friend Hank said, fear of debt. You're afraid of taking on debt. What else? What else do you guys feel? What circumstances cause you guys to feel fear? It is usually in pursuit of a value. It's usually a response to the risk of failure. It's usually in response to the risk of rejection. People are afraid of changing career. People are afraid of potential failure. Fear for Thomas of 3 minutes before going on stage to form the cello, right? For me, maybe it's fear going on stage to give a talk to 1,000 people. So think about that. You feel the fear. If you have the time, the first thing to ask yourself is, what are the facts of reality? What are the facts of reality that lead to this fear? The girl could say no if I ask her out on a date. Okay, that's a fact. Rejection. I might step out there onto the stage and forget the notes. I might embarrass myself in front of all these people. I might quit my job and not find another one. I might get into debt and not be able to pay it back. These are threats to the pursuit of other values that I might have. So first, you have to identify, what is it? What is it? Is the negative outcome that is the potential negative outcome out there. It's not a certainty, it's a potential negative outcome. So the first thing you have to do is identify the source of the issue, the facts in reality, causing you to feel this way. And sometimes you might feel fear and not know what the cause is exactly. You have to think through, when did I start feeling this way? What happened? What am I doing right now? What values am I pursuing right now? Or what values that I have are under threat right now? So, one, identify the source of the fear. Two, how likely is it to actually happen? Three, if it happens, why do I care so much? And four, is it worth it? So what's the chance of it happening? Well, the chance of Thomas going out on stage and not knowing his notes or embarrassing in front of the audience, the odds are almost zero. They're almost zero. They're negligible. They're so negligible that in spite of that fear, Thomas can fairly easily say, I'm still going out. And indeed, as soon as he steps onto stage, sits down and takes the bow and starts playing, the fear disappears. Because he knows, fully integrated, that he's not going to forget the notes. But in advance of him actually sitting, in advance of him actually letting himself go and letting all that practice and all that knowledge manifest itself in his bow and in his cello, right? There's an instant of worry, fear. Now, I have to say, going out on stage to speak, of course, the more I do it, the more frequently I do it, the less nerves, the less fear, the less anxiety there is. And usually there's just zero. I mean, if it's a special event or there's a large audience or there's something unique about the situation or the talk, then maybe a little bit. But the more you do it, the more you overcome the fear, the more you actually do it and nothing bad happens, the more you automatize to yourself, no, this is ridiculous. Of course, I can speak on stage. Of course, I can play the cello. The fear slowly diminishes and ultimately goes away. And the more you think about it, the more you consciously think about it and place a probability on it and observe your successes, the more it'll go away. So the first thing one has to assess is the probability of failure. Now, you ask a girl out, you might not know what the probability of failure, or the probability of failure might be high. But it's good to just assess what it is. Right? The fear of potential failure in a business. Good to assess because it's important to know. Because it's important to know whether you want to go ahead with the business. Part of your assessing. Whether it is worth pursuing this value is to assess what the probability of success is. So Thomas says, he'd say it doesn't go away. You learn to manage the fear and go on to do the performance. I think it can go away. It's certainly gone away. My stage fright has certainly gone away with practice. Now, of course, we all have our own psychologies, and it all is a question of the work we put into it and how much work it's worth putting into it, right? It might not be worth, like I've said before, I've got a fear of heights. I can overcome it. I don't always because it's not worth it. And I can probably get away with it with the right amount of work. But I've never really, it doesn't bother me enough to devote that kind of work to it. One of Friedman, if you think it is in the computer, then I use OBS. You might want to look at OBS software, which is the audio and video software I use to stream this, and see if you can identify anything there that would lead to this issue. All right, you observe the fear, you assess the probability of the bad outcome actually happening. Is it high? Is it low? You integrate that knowledge. You make sure that knowledge is integrated so that, knowing that the probability of failure is low should reduce the fear, and does, I think, particularly if it's a repeatable event. Third, with the debt, right? The fear of going bankrupt or fear of I'm not going to be able to afford other things. Well, you can run the numbers. You can run the numbers. And see, what's the probability? What's the chance? To what extent does this debt actually pose a real threat to my finances? You can test it. You can figure it out. One of you just Google it. OBS streaming software, streaming service. That's what it's called. OBS. Yeah, for the Mac. All right, so now you have a probability of what the failure rate is. The third issue is, why do I care? Right? Why do I care? Why do I care about the failure? Now, of course, none of us, how much do I care about the failure? None of us want to fail. But often, a fear is caused not by some real failure, right? Not by some real failure, some inability to achieve values. But often fear has to do with other people's assessment of you. What will other people think? So one of the important things to assess when you're assessing your fear is to what extent is it motivated, not by actual failure to achieve my values, but by what other people might think of what just happened, of me falling down, of the girl turning me down, of, whatever the issue is. So to the extent that there is a second-handed motivation, that is a motivation that is not about your values, that is not about your success in achieving your values, but it is about what other people think about you, then you need to really think why you care so much about what other people think of you. And whether that is a reason to cripple or to slow down or to make emotionally difficult your pursuit of values. That is, it might be that you don't actually fear the failure. We'll talk about failure in a bit. What you actually fear is what other people think about you failing. And what other people think doesn't matter. This is where, again, it's your life, your values, you shouldn't be motivated by what other people think, for good or for bad. So here, it's going to require some work, some undoing of some hidden premises, some undoing of probably some altruism. We all grew up with altruism. The culture is imbued with altruism. Altruism teaches us that other people are the most important thing, that we are secondary, that what's really important is other people. Altruism teaches us not to think about ourselves, not to focus on our own values, not to focus on our own happiness, and to cherish other people's values, other people's thoughts, other people's thoughts about us. So some of the work to get rid of or to control fear, I'll call it irrational fear. I mean, the emotion itself is not irrational because it's based on actual premises, but the premises behind it are irrational. So you have to get rid of the bad premises. You have to get rid of the irrational premises. So you have to identify what you're afraid of, and if what you're afraid of is wrong, it's just not something worthy of fear because it doesn't pose a risk to you. It doesn't pose a risk to your values. Again, fear in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's why are you afraid? So weed out the irrational. Weed out the second-handed. Weed out the altruistic. You shouldn't care if other people laugh at your attempt. What you should care about is your attempt, your success, your failure, what you learn, how you can progress, how you can get better at living. So you need to assess the thing that is causing this fear, the thing that can cause the failure. Right? So, certain premises that you have, problematic, right? Now, Thomas says he wonders what Gina Golan, the psychologist, would think about this, would add to this. That's great. It's a good point to make. I'm not a psychologist. This is my best effort as a non-psychologist, right? But it would be interesting to talk to a psychologist and see what she says, or he says, psychologist, about deeper levels maybe, and how to do a lot of this. All right, so if you identify the source of the fear, now the question is, and you've identified the probability of it happening, Now the question is, how bad would failure actually be? How bad would failure actually be? What would be the consequences of failure? Is failure indeed a life or death issue? Well, if it is, then fear is appropriate. Fear is appropriate. And one has to think about, how do I avoid situations that are life or death in that sense? Is fear just a small step backwards that I can then recover and move forward with? I mean, is failure. How big of a threat is failure to my values? And here there's a really, I want to make a really important point, because people fear failure too much. They don't have a good assessment of the consequences of failure. Okay, the girl says no. Now let's assume it's a casual thing, right? You're not madly in love with her. You just find her interesting, attractive. You want to go out with her. You ask her for a date. She says no. What happened? Well, this particular goal was not achieved. This particular value was not gained. It's not a massively important value. So, not that big of a downside. Why am I so afraid of doing it? Because she will think badly of me, but that's a second-handed one. That's the issue of second-handedness. Right? So what if she thinks badly of me, or if she giggles, if she thinks I'm funny or ridiculous or whatever? The exercise was not to try to get her to like me. The exercise was to see if she'd go out on a date with me. Life will go on. Right? Yeah, you failed. Next time, try again. Learn from the failure. What did I do wrong? Or is it just not a good match? Frank's problem is if the girl says yes. That's what he says. The real trouble starts with the girl says yes. Then what do you do? You fail at business, or you fail at a startup. You're afraid of starting your own business because you might fail. Okay, well, how bad is failing at a business? Are you putting all of your life savings in? Of course, what's the probability of failing? Then once you have the probability, what's the downside of failing? You're pursuing your values. You're pursuing something really important to you. Failing is not good. It's to be avoided if you can, right? Because you're trying to be successful. You're trying to do something well. But what is the downside if you do fail? Is it the end of your dream? Could you not start again fresh? Can you not shift to another idea? Is your life destroyed? Will happiness be impossible? Do you have the confidence to go and make the money again and start all over? Well, if you do, if you do have the confidence, if you can start over, if you live in a culture that doesn't penalize you for failing, then failure is just part of the process. Nothing. I mean, this is really, in a sense, metaphysical point. Failure is part of the process. Nothing is guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to have the goal say yes to you. You're not guaranteed that every time you start a business, it'll be successful. Although some people seem to have the magic touch when it comes to that. You're not guaranteed that every attempt you make at something in life will go well. Failure is a distinct possibility, a high probability. It's more how you deal with it. Do you deal with it as, yeah, no, this is just part of pursuing values. Sometimes you don't get them. And you have to find a new route. And if they're important to you, you keep plugging ahead. You could go after them. If they're not that important to you, you shift your focus to somewhere else. Jennifer said, Edison failed 99% of the time. Absolutely. Michael Jordan missed more shots than he made. Many more shots than he made. There's a great quote from Michael Jordan about all the shots that he missed that to some extent made it possible for him to make so many shots. So many clutch shots that he missed that made it possible for him to make the clutch shots that he made. Partially because the missing motivated him. The missing taught him. The missing gave him experience to make it. So, I'm sure Thomas, when he was young, when he was a kid, made lots of mistakes on the cello, even if on a stage. It's part of learning an instrument, is to fail. Right? All right. Let me just see something here. Setting output, streaming. Yeah. Audio bitrate. Yeah, what should that be? What should the audio bitrate be? It's at 2500 right now, kbps. Let me know what it should be instead of 2500 and we'll see. I mean, how many, when I started teaching, I was terrible. But I didn't run in fear. I didn't hide under the desk. I didn't stop teaching. It was a value to me, so I figured it out. And I failed, and I failed, and students laughed, and, students were not happy. And I got better every time, and finally I got really, really good, and I won teaching awards. Because you keep going at it, because it's a value to you. Now, if it wasn't a value to me, if I didn't care about teaching, if I didn't want to really teach, then I wouldn't do it. Right? Wouldn't do it. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. When a Freeman, it's probably not good to do it right in the middle. I don't see any advanced features. I can change the rate control from CBR to ABR to VBR to CRF. I can change the CPU usage preset. There's some profiles. There's tune. I don't know what that is. Yeah, I don't know. And there's audio and there's replay buffer. All right. Let's see. Audio. Audio bitrate is 160 and I can't change it. It's not changeable. Anyway, so Hank wants me to change my rate control to CRT, to critical race theory. Audio has a sample rate of 48 hertz. Decay rate is fast. Peak meter is sample peak. Monitoring device is the notepad, and that's it. All right, so let's see. Let's do this. So you have to assess, as I said, so what if you fail? What is the worst that can happen? What's the worst case scenario? Will you survive? Will you be able to continue pursuing your values? If the answer to that is yes, 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 then should I be afraid? How afraid should I be? And if you integrate that, if you actually think it through, not just hold it as an abstraction, yeah, no big deal, but actually think through the steps, in a sense, imagine, what would happen? What's the worst case scenario? What could actually go wrong? If everything goes wrong, will I still survive? Will I still be able to thrive? Will I still be able to do the things that I need to do? And again, if the answer is yes, then okay, you feel the fear. You keep integrating that knowledge, maybe the fear will go away. But in any case, what you cannot allow is for the fear to stop you. Because that's what fear does. It stops you. It tells you to walk away. It tells you to huddle and to stop. So, fear should cause you to think. Think it through. You don't not act. You don't not pursue your values because of fear, unless the thinking leads you to the conclusion that it's not worth it. It's too dangerous. It's too bad. But so many people don't ask the girl out. So many people don't start that business. So many people stay in a career that's a dead end and don't switch. Stay in a career they don't love when they would want to try something new, but they are too afraid to do it. What would happen if you quit your job and you tried something different? Now, if you're single, would you starve? Would you be a disappointment to your parents? Maybe. Is that important? No. Then don't let it cripple you. Don't let it stop you. Fear of debt. Well, how much debt? What kind of debt? How much do they make? How much are you going to make next month, next year, 10 years from now? Always within the context of, all this within the context of, what are my values? What does my life require? What does my happiness require? What am I striving to achieve? What is the risk relative to what I'm trying to achieve? People are afraid to tell other people the truth. Well, the value I'm trying to achieve here is honesty. What's the worst that can happen? The other person gets offended. They don't want to be my friend. If that's the response to my attempt to tell them what I think is true, why am I their friend? And even if they respond that way in the first 5 minutes, will they then think about it and maybe change their response? Because they're my friend and they're pretty rational people. So, those are the kind of things you have to think through. Remember Ayn Rand's ethics. Ayn Rand's ethical code of selfishness is about thinking. The primary virtue is thinking. It's to be rational. Primary value is reason. Use your capacity to think. Right. So, fear is probably the emotion that most cripples people's pursuit of values. Because people are afraid to fail. Because they don't really think through what failure means. They don't really think through the consequences of failure. They don't really think through how they can learn from failure. And how failure is not a dead end. Again, think Thomas Jefferson. Think serial entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley who failed. Think Steve Jobs, who got fired from his first job. Started another company, failed with that. Started another company, took over another company, succeeded, became CEO of another one, made it the biggest company in the world. So, don't let failure destroy your capacity. Don't let fear of failure destroy your capacity to lead the life you want to lead, to pursue the values that are important to you. Right? Let's see. Whoops. Got a $20 question here. Let me just copy it over. So to overcome fear, you got to think. You got to think through what I just told you. Then the other thing you got to do is orient your mind towards solutions, not towards problems. So I'm afraid because there's this problem at work and it could get me fired. Well, then what's the solution? How do we solve this? I'm afraid because my business idea still is, the risk of failure seems too high. What's the solution? How do I reduce the risk of failure? Right? So think in terms of the source of the fear, the probability of the fear, the cause of the fear, and your attitude towards failure. And then think of solutions. Oftentimes, when you start thinking about the solutions, the fear will go away. Oh, I can handle that. I can deal with that. I mean, it's not a big deal, but solutions are there. I mean, and the more solutions you come up with, the more ways you think you can tackle a problem. The more likely it is that you will be, that fear will start diminishing. Because suddenly your mind will open up to all these, wow, there's a lot of ways I can deal with this that don't mean a bad outcome. So plan, think about the positives, think about the solution, and it always frame it in terms of what is the value I'm going after? Why is this important to me? Why am I doing this? Why do I think this is a good path? It's all about values, which really means it's all about life, a life worth living. Right? All right. The positive here is that you want to live a life of courage. You want to be courageous. It's important to be courageous. it's important to have the courage to overcome your fears, to understand them, address them if they're legitimate issues that are being raised by them, and overcome them. You want to be motivated by, Apollo Zeus says, motivated by love, motivated by values, motivated by life. Not motivated by fear, by failure, by death. You want to live a life of courage. Now, courage is not only in the face of fear. Courage is a commitment to your values in spite of hardships, which might not be fearful, it might be just hard, right? It's not, Reardon, in making Reardon metal, is not fearful that he'll fail, but it's hard. And it's no fun when he fails, when you fail. But there's a commitment to the value. There's a commitment to working through the pain, the tiredness, and in this case, the fear. Right? So courage is that commitment to values in spite of stake. Your values are at stake. Your happiness is at stake. And if we go back to the first rule, to the first of Yaron's rules, there's nothing above your life. Right? You guys have any video problems? Or the video coming through fine? All right. Let me just copy this down from Landon. Is asking one question in multiple super chats, which makes it difficult. Okay. So you want to live a courageous life. Courage is a virtue. It's a virtue under integrity, right? You live your values, live your ideals. You act out your values, right? So courage is a real virtue. Courage is something to work on. To work on that commitment, to work on that focus, to work on not compromising your values, no matter what the obstacles you face. No matter what the obstacles you face. And of course, in the face of fear, courage is not the denial of that fear. It's not the rejection of that fear. It's the understanding of the fear and not letting the fear take over. Not letting the fear dominate. Not letting the fear cripple you, slow you down, prevent you from pursuing your values. Something wrong. I'm not sure what is wrong here. There we go. Sorry, guys. One second. All right. Of course, all this leads to the idea that you should be risk takers in life. You should be risk takers in life. Pursuing values there are no guarantees. There's no certainty. There's no knowledge that you will succeed. I mean, there's confidence maybe, but no absolute knowledge in it. All right. So you gotta take risks. And you gotta pursue challenges. Because that's what your values demand. You're gonna intellectually take risks. Seek out to be a truth seeker is uncertain path. Dogma is easy. Dogma is easy. All right. So be a risk taker and have the right attitude towards failure. Failure is an opportunity to learn. Again, assuming it's not a life or death. Failure is an opportunity to grow. Failure is not the end of the world. Failure is how you progress and how you advance and how you take the next step. Scott asks, are these good lessons for ARI too? Yeah, this is exactly how ARI is run. So I know you have a negative motivation behind that question, but all right, let's see. We got a lot of questions related to this topic. Let me just jump to Landon's question, which is long, and it's quite a bit more than $20 because it's like it's like 7 super chats. Okay, on the subject of fear and risk, I'm about to make a major career choice, and I'm not sure what I value more. This will take a few posts to explain, so bear with me. I currently am underpaid, $75K, in a technical manager role. In top-down org that gives little support. However, it's a job I love, where I'm the leading expert, where I could build a $10 million business and become director in a few years, and I was just offered a raise to $100,000. I get complete creative freedom. Creative freedom, the pride of building something that's mine and growing a business from 0 to 10 million are hugely important to me. At the same time, I was also just offered the same role at a profitable startup and competitor for $135,000 and stock options, better benefits. I would also be working directly for someone who could teach me a ton and who could acquire any team support we need. However, for at least 2 years in the new role, I would have to do as I was told, and my career path isn't clear. For additional consideration, my wife and I have no student loans, no credit cards, no card debt, just a mortgage, and she works. For me to be this indecisive, is there any context I could be leaving out? What would Yaron Brook do? P.S. Thank you for the show. All right. I don't know what I would do. And I'm sure there is context you're leaving out. So we'll try to get to the primary context I think you're leaving out here, or the primary consideration I would look at. First of all, congratulations. These are the kind of problems we all should have. You've got 2 outcomes that sound fantastic, right? You've got one outcome where maybe you're being paid less, but you love your job, you're doing fantastic work, and you're building a business that you can be proud of, and you're creating something, and that's great. And the alternative is to make more money, to learn from somebody you value, to have amazing resources, and to make a lot of money potentially because you're getting stock options. And, after 2 years, that's the context I'm missing, to do who knows what. So first, these are the kind of options that a successful life leads to. Multiple great options. You're not going to be losing either way. It's more a question of where do you max out? And we want to max out in life. So to me, what I would ask you is, what do you project your role would be 2 years out? So in the existing job, you're confident in saying that you are going to build a $10 million business in a few years. So assuming that's more than 2. And you know exactly what the future holds in that sense. Do you have any sense what happens 2 years out? Is after the 2 years, are you going to be able to build a $10 million business? Maybe it's $100 million business. 2 years after you've learned all these additional skills and you're at a startup, so maybe they're taking more risk and but more exciting opportunities. What is the probability that in 2 years from now, you will have even a chance to build something even bigger, better than what you're building now? So that's one other question I would have. The other question I'd have is, what if the second job doesn't work out? What if it sucks? You get there, you're paying more, you spend 6 months, and you know what? You really don't like this, your boss, or you don't like this guy you're learning a lot from. You're learning, but you hate him. And that future that we're talking about 2 years from now on, no, you're going to have to do what you're told for more than 2 years, and you don't like it. What then? Could you imagine a third job, or fourth job, or fifth job? Can you imagine other alternatives? If so, what are they? Are they really, really bad? So, I don't know, right? What is the corporate culture at this new place? How confident are you that in 2 years you'll be allowed to do your thing and be allowed to advance and to build the business the way you want to build it? Right? If they're giving you this big raise, they obviously know they're giving you a raise, and they're giving you stock options. It sounds to me like they really value you, which means they'll want ultimately to get the most out of you. Out of you. And therefore, that is an optimistic sign. That is a sign that they will let you do the kind of things you want to do. So look, I'm a risk taker, and if I thought that if I can get these two jobs, I can probably get a third or fourth job. So I would go to the new one. I mean, particularly if you think the startup has a potential to really be successful, particularly if you think there's a lot of upside here. So if you go beyond beyond what you could do in the first company, because it's a startup, because they're ambitious, because they're paying you more, they'll expect more. Can you then, with confidence, imagine that you're going to be doing amazing things at this place that you couldn't do at the previous place? That's my inclination. But I can't make that choice for you, right? Cannot make that choice for you. And the fact that you have no debt and all of that, yeah, why not take the risk? Why not try it? I don't know how many years you've been at the current job. I don't know what would happen if you went to your boss and said, look, I've got an offer for 135, if they would match it. But there's also a certain energy and excitement about being involved in a startup. Fear as well, because it's a startup. Startups often fail. But also excitement. All right, I hope that helped, Landon. Let me know if it helped. When is it? Let me just see. Yeah, when is it rational to be the hero? Thank you, Skylar. That's a very generous super chat. When is it rational to be the hero and eliminate or neutralize an attacker with a weapon, even if you're unarmed or outnumbered? Well, it's rational. The extent of rationality depends on basically two things. One, the threat posed to your values. That is, what's the alternative to you being a hero? Death? Be a hero then. Death of your wife and kids? Be a hero then. So what's the downside? What's inaction? What's the cost of inaction? The cost of not being the hero? The cost of not acting? The cost of not taking out or neutralizing an attacker? And then second, your ability. To what extent are you capable of taking out the attacker? So it's a question of to what extent are your values threatened? And to what extent do you think the probability that those values will be destroyed is? And the higher the probability they will be destroyed, the greater the need for you to be a hero, for you to take action. Right? And, and it also, it very much depends on context, right? Who are you defending? Who is being threatened? What is your role? What is your job? Why are you there? And again, what are your competencies? Right? But generally, you want to avoid a fight because the downside of a fight is you die. It's not good. So to the extent that you can avoid a fight, whether that means running, ducking, whatever. But if avoiding a fight means your values are destroyed, like you're avoiding a fight, but your wife and kids are going to get killed, then you got to fight. And you got to do whatever you can to be a hero. Skylar, let me know if I missed out on anything. Let's see. Often my fear comes from uncertainty regarding my values. I'm not as worried about failing in an attempt at my values, but it's spending time at failing or achieving a lesser or non-value. I am bad at figuring that out. I think what you need to do then is spend time really introspecting, really thinking about what your values are. Start with the most abstract, moral values, and then start drilling into your personal values. And try to figure out what's more important to you. Both emotionally, but importantly, what do you think rationally? From the perspective of your happiness or your career, your success, the various aspects of your life, what is most important rationally? Sometimes your emotions are not a good orientation towards what is a more important value and what is a less important value. Think and figure it out. So I think it's the upfront work of creating a hierarchy of values, rationally, thought out, devoting the time, the resources to doing it well and to doing it right. And if you do that, then the fear and the action will be a lot easier. Overcoming the fear and acting will be a lot easier because you'll have gained the certainty, and you'll gain the certainty by thinking it through, by proving to yourself that certain values are more important than other values to your life. And not, again, don't over-rely on emotions and passions here. You've got to think, what does this actually contribute to my life? So it's hard work. It's a lot of work. But life requires it, right? Requires thinking through a hierarchy of values, creating a hierarchy of values. That's what morality demands. People describe me as a type B personality. It takes a lot to stir me up. To compensate, I try to keep anxious people around me so they can alert me of problems that I don't see. Is that second-handed? No. I mean, if you know that you're not very good at catching problems, it's not bad to have people around you who are good at that, right? That's not second-handed, right? That is gaining a value from other people. It's not orienting your behavior and your values to please them or not to please them, right? So And I don't know what type A and type B personalities are. I mean, I think not. It takes a lot to stir somebody up. I don't, what does that mean, right? So I don't know why you can't be an A personality, and it takes a lot to stir you up. A personalities, I think, are active and entrepreneurial and engaged and feel less in some sense. And that doesn't mean they get stirred up. So I think people confuse these categories. And unfortunately, they don't mean that much because people just use them in such vague, meaningless ways. All right, such a pathetic era we live in when it is considered a virtue to not take yourself too seriously. I see this on dating apps all the time. I don't take myself too seriously, or look for someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously. It is a pathetic era. It's an era with no pride. Pride, if you remember, according to Aristotle, is the queen of the virtues. It's the virtue of taking life seriously. It's the virtue of taking morality seriously, which means taking life seriously. It's the virtue of pursuing your values, your moral values, without any compromise. The striving towards moral perfection. The striving to be courageous and not let fear cripple you. The striving to have integrity in everything that you do. People don't do that. Now, people like to make fun of themselves. They like to make fun of their values. They like to put themselves down. We live in an era defined to a large extent by cynicism. Cynicism. The putting down of life and putting down of self. Right? Huh. All right. So I agree completely that it is truly a whoops, what happened there? Truly a sad state of the world in which people, seek out people who don't take their life seriously. But the whole point of living is to live. And how can you live if you don't take your life seriously? So this is Ayn Rand's slapping the culture in the face. Poking it in the eye. I mean, it really is. And it's why people don't like her. Because she demands something of them that is foreign. And that nobody else has ever demanded from them. To live fully, every moment, to embrace life, to take everything that life has to offer to you. I am new to Rand and objectivism. I read The Fountainhead last summer, and it was life-changing. I have a better outlook, but still have much to learn and internalize. Your videos are much appreciated. Thank you. I'm really glad. I'm glad you read The Fountainhead. I'm glad it's improved your life. I assume you've read The Atlas Shrugged. If not, you should. And read Ayn Rand's nonfiction. And Leonard Peikoff's courses. Listen to Leonard Peikoff's courses and read Ayn Rand's nonfiction. Those are the things that will really help you as you learn. Leonard Peikoff is the greatest teacher of objectivism ever. Noel says, quotes FDR, the only thing to fear is fear itself. Should fear be feared? It's not that fear should be feared. It's the paralyzing impact of fear that should be feared. It's the not taking road less traveled that should be feared because of fear. It's the running away from your values because of fear that should be feared. It's the actions that fear when the actions are irrational, when it hasn't been thought through, that should be feared. So the fear itself, no, the fear itself one should learn for, analyze, figure out. But so what fear does to you should be feared. Landon writes, great and helpful feedback you're on. We'll think on it more. Side note, inspired by Rourke, I put a sticky note on my monitor when I started my job 5 years ago that read, find a way to be a hero daily. Excellent. Landon says, this gives me the courage to do what I needed to do, to say what I needed to be said, to stand out in my career. You know, that's the beauty of what Ayn Rand has given all of us. And what all I'm doing is asking you to take Ayn Rand seriously, to take your commitment to her ideas seriously, to take your life seriously, but to be guided by, she's given us so much. She's given us the guidance to do it. Right? She's given us the guidance to do it, the direction to do it, the ethics to guide our life in this first-handed way that is committed to reality, committed to facts, committed to truth. All right, let's see. Any more out of fear? Have you seen Pixar movie Inside Out? Particularly interested in your view of how emotions take charge in cognition. No, well, if I have, I can't remember, but I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen it. Is there a distinction between second-handedness and fear of being shunned by people who you would like to trade with? Sure. But the question is, why are they shunning you? And if they're shunning you for irrational reasons, do you really want to trade with them? So don't rationalize your second-handedness. Don't try to rationalize. I mean, figure out if you really are second-handedness. Most of us are at some point in our lives because, again, we're surrounded by altruism. Figure it out and face it and deal with it. But sure, you want to avoid people who are important to you for a variety of reasons, from being disappointed in you, but at what cost? At what price? And if you think their attitude towards you is irrational, they would shun you. Why? What have you done? Then why do you want to trade with them to begin with? You should ask yourself that. This goes back to my rules about friendship or about trade. Think about who you're trading with. You mentioned having many different careers. What was your riskiest career move and how did it turn out? Oh, I don't know. I mean, certainly going to grad school in the U.S. was a major risk. I was thriving in the career I had as a civil engineer. My boss had just offered me a partnership. So I was employee number one. And we were growing so fast, and we'd hired so many people during my tenure, that after a year, my boss offered me to be his partner in a thriving construction management practice in Israel. And I gave that up to go to the United States, knowing my wife wouldn't be able to work, knowing we had no money. I had enough money to pay tuition for the first year, but that was it. Not knowing what it would be like, where we would live, but primarily how we would make a living, and whether the move would work out in a sense of, I just gave up a partnership in a business. I didn't know, was I going to make a living there? Could I make a living there? Would I be successful? What was the career path? So that was certainly one of them. The other was I was leaving the university and going to be full-time at the hedge fund, at the financial company that was working for a hedge fund at the time. I was going to make a lot of money, pretty much guaranteed that I was going to make a lot of money. I had a great client. I had a great partner. We were building a business that looked like it was going to be incredibly successful. And then I got offered the job of CEO of the Ayn Rand Institute, which meant I had to give up at least part of my ambition with regard to the business. I didn't know if I'd be good at running the Institute. I didn't know if I'd enjoy it, if it would be, but I gave up the sure thing and went with the Institute, and I gave up a lot of money for doing that. So I would have made many, many millions of dollars, which I did not, because I became the CEO of the Institute instead of staying at my finance company. Millions of dollars, easily. I know this because I know how much more my partner is worth than I am. And plus, the business would have evolved differently if I was there. So we would have been success. We would have been even more successful. And so, yeah. But it was worth it. I don't regret that. I don't regret taking that step. I started a business that failed, a framing store, in 1994. 9 months it went bust, basically. I lost a lot of money. I can't say I was ever afraid, really. I don't know. I'm sure people think, I landed up with $50,000 of credit card debt while I was making, $70,000 a year. That never really worried me. Wanda Freeman asked, you are president of the Ayn Rand Show? Yeah. This is a profitable venture. Thanks Alejandrina, we do pretty well. Thomas, thank you for the contribution. We do pretty well. But yes, I'm president, CEO, and number one employee, owner of the Yaron Brook Show. All true. Actually, it's called Brook Media and Consulting. That is the business. But and now I'm a full partner again at the hedge fund, so I'm back in that business. So everything's worked out great. I can't complain, and I don't complain. Let's see. Do you think some authors are into self-publishing because they fear failure and receive too many rejection slips? I don't read self-published books. I think in many cases that's true. I don't think in all cases it's true. I think particularly now that the self-publishing business, it's a hassle to go through a publishing house. It's a lot of work. It's not clear how worth it is. Having been published by a publishing house, I can tell you they don't do that much. They don't add that much value. So is it really worth it when I can publish it myself? I don't know. I don't know. So I wouldn't come to that conclusion about people. How do you think fear of death is affected by atheistic metaphysics versus belief in an afterlife? Well, certainly belief in an afterlife makes things easier in terms of death. You would think that death would be welcome because the afterlife is such a wonderful place. So I think it certainly affects how people approach it. Being an atheist, death is the end. And it is that end, I think, that finality, which I think causes people to fear it. Right? So yeah, I think there's a very different attitude if you think it continues in some other dimension, or whether you think it ends. How come altruism didn't play a role in the... okay, so these are non-related. Let's see. Naruto says, I missed a lot of the show today, even though I thought I set a reminder. So no relevant question, just showing love for the podcast audience. Have a great night. Thank you. Thank you. That gets us over 500. What's your biggest regret, mistake in life other than not getting into computer science? I don't regret that. I think it's interesting, and sometimes when I'm in Silicon Valley, I think that's a world that would have been fun to be in. But I can't say I regret it because I can't even conceive of it. Yeah, don't forget to like the show before you leave. We should have over 100 likes. I don't know what my greatest regret mistake is. I mean, I have some regrets, mistakes that I made in running the Institute towards the end of my tenure, but I don't want to get into those. Because I'm still paying for them and they're still playing out. I don't really have... You know, part of it is that I'm not... I should play Schoenberg music until I get more likes. I think people will cancel my likes and give me a thumbs down if I did that. I would give myself a thumbs down if I did that. You have much more tolerance for Schoenberg than I do. I try to learn from the past, but I don't dwell on the past. And I don't spend a lot of time on the past. So I don't play out these scenarios of what if. If something doesn't work, I try to figure out why it doesn't work and I try to get better at it. But I don't imagine parallel lives in which, so I don't really have big regrets, mistakes. You know, maybe some in my personal life but I not for the show. Some at work, but nothing earth-shattering. Yeah, I'd say sometimes with people, I think this is true in work and in personal, you have to know when to cut the ties. And I'd say on a number of occasions, both in friendship and at work, I didn't cut the ties when I should have, in terms of sometimes you have to cut your losses, admit to failure, and move on. Move on. And I think sometimes I let it ride for too long. I keep trying. I keep trying to make something work that can't work. And that's happened to me with people I care about, people I value, people that are important to me. In the past, and it's a really, really important lesson, is to know when to cut the ties, to know when to give up, to know when there's no point anymore. All right. Did you read the CNBC Twitter link I sent you about Jim Kramer's socialist comments about concerning wealth surtax? I'm not surprised by anything Jim Kramer does. He's a hack. He's not a serious human being. The fact that he has socialist or statist ideas doesn't surprise me. The fact that he thinks, like everybody else, that the billionaires should pay more taxes, not less, and the more they pay, the better, doesn't surprise me. The fact that they can't even calculate the taxes wealthy people pay doesn't surprise me. That's stupid and ignorant that they can't even pay it. I mean, what taxes does Jeff Bezos pay? Well, most of his money's in his stock. If he doesn't sell the stock, he doesn't pay any taxes on his wealth. And what's his income? His income's pretty low. But what about all the corporate taxes he pays? Because his money is in a corporation and it pays corporate taxes. Isn't that taxes? Nobody ever counts his corporate taxes. So, yeah. I mean, the whole discussion about taxation is fraught with error and confusion, envy. And then Jim Kramer is just an idiot. How come altruism didn't play a role in the defeat of the enemy during World War II? Good question. I think America was less altruistic the further back you go. people in America. The American sense of life was... And then there was this attitude about evil that I think faded after World War II for whatever reason. That sometimes you just have to go all out and crush the enemy. Right? So, Naruto, I did not talk about regret. So it's interesting historically how quickly the country has been or on what issues and where the country's influenced by altruism more than in other places. But the country was less altruistic back then, there's no question. Just broadly, there's no welfare state. Altruism, particularly in its political manifestation. I mean, there was more pride in America. There was more pride in America. There was more confidence in our moral superiority, cultural superiority. And yes, there was some altruism, but it was primarily, it was relegated to the sideline because there was a war, at least to some extent. All right. All right. What's the most fun shows you've created? Huh. The most fun shows. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, certainly I enjoy the shows in which I talk about these kind of things, about living life, about how to live life, about pursuing your values. Those are fun. Yeah, I'd have to think about that. I mean, I like the history ones when I really know the history. I really enjoy those, or the finance ones. I really love the finance ones. I love when I get to defend heroes, when I defend the good guys. But I need to think about what the most fun shows I've done. I'd have to look at a list of my shows and scan them and see. Any thoughts on the essence of regret? I mean, I don't get regret. I don't find regret very useful. I think one can learn from one's mistakes. One can grow from one's mistakes. And yeah, one should regret them, regret doing them, but obsessing about regret or making regret a central feature or a central theme in one's life is very bad and very dangerous. You got to do the best that you can do with the choices you have made and constantly improve them. So my orientation psychologically and cognitively is towards the future, not towards the past. Towards how to do better next time, not what did I screw up in the past. I'm very bad at feeling sorry for myself, although it happens periodically. While I regret, if I do something bad, I regret it and I apologize for it. But I take action. If you've caused an injustice, if you've done something that you can change that relates to another person, if you've done something that you regret, fix it, learn from it, move on. It's my attitude. Posting another $10 to get to an even 100 total. I get that without morality, values wouldn't exist, but I really wouldn't want to die, Yaron. Like ever. Life too wonderful to let go. I agree. I don't want to die. And it's not that I fear death, it's that I don't want the story to end. It's like I don't want to walk out in the middle of a good movie. I don't want to walk out in the middle of a good life. And why isn't it the middle? Why is it the end? And the story's still going because the universe is still going. Now, there is an attitude that says, Ayn Rand had this, that the universe ends when you end. So the story ends, the whole story. Haven't been able to completely orient myself around that. I still think, but there's stuff that's going to happen, and I don't know how it turns out, and I want to know how it turns out. Certainly, I don't want to die. I completely agree with that sentiment. Life's too interesting. But you're going to, and that's just a fact. So it's not a fact I resent, right? Too many people resent, like Jordan Peterson, believe that their entire morality, their entire way of living is framed by the fact that they will die, by the fact that they resent that they will die, by the fact that there's this horror of them dying, and that shapes us. And that's a very, very, very disastrous approach to living. It's an approach to dying, spending your life dying. All right, everybody, I am out of here. Tomorrow we do effective altruism, utilitarianism. Should you eat chicken or beef? Talk to you tomorrow at 8 p.m. East Coast time. Thank you for all the super chatters. Thank you, Ali. We got to $550. You guys are exceeding the $400 easily. Here's one last question. Best friend Hank says, did anyone object to a woman, Ayn Rand, telling a man how to direct his life? Who did Ayn Rand tell how to direct his life? In what sense? Don't get the question, Hank. You're going to have to spend more money and clarify. But we'll do that tomorrow. Bye, everybody.